The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So we're continuing on with our talking about past lives. In How to Grow a Lotus Blossom, on page 41, Reverend Master Jiyu talks about past lives she experiences. When I first read about them, I took it the way I always took everything, as solid, finite beings. Years later, heard her say on a tape, "Why do you think I titled it, the chapter, Vast Emptiness?" "Oh," I went. Slow. I went back and looked it up, and I had totally missed the message. It's also interesting to note that in those past lives, there were a number of monastic past lives, or deeply religious past lives. And there wasn't karma that needed to be cleansed from them. It's not necessarily that we're perfect when we do spiritual practice. That was a joke, the necessarily. We are not. But it is our effort to try to clean things up, to be with things, to apologize. The things we do naturally as part of our daily practice helps cleanse karma. Don't forget that. What are we seeing when we see past lives? Not a solid being. And truthfully, except in rare circumstances, not somebody's complete life. We're seeing a moment or moments. Probably a mistake being made. Something to learn from, something to be compassionate to, something to love. And also something that a being may have regretted, a real sadness. Reverend Master Daisui referred to it as saddened love. So we see, and we're still. We investigate, not to believe. Reverend Master Jiyu in How to Grow a Lotus Blossom said to the karmic imprint of the life before her current life as she was cleaning it, quote, "If you had known the truth and understood the law of karma, which teaches that every cause has an effect, you would not have committed these acts, which had horrible results." I put that in, which had horrible results. That's the end of her statement. You would not have committed these acts. This is the main purpose of seeing past lives, to speak with your heart to the heart of another, owning the deed, learning from it, and then going on. Whether we see the life or not, the attitude of mind is of training. And that's the important thing. It's our practice. I think I mentioned this, but in case I didn't, I'm going to say it again. When I am seeing the news or hear about someone creating suffering, I often silently recite the contrition verse to myself because I recognize it, the suffering, because I could have done it, because we're all interconnected, and because we train with others. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, we come back to this phrase, which is I have found so helpful, that the Buddha taught, if you wish to understand your life in the past, watch your mind in the present. And when you wish to understand your life in the future, watch your mind in the present. We take this up and practice it. We practice it when we experience past lives. We practice it in our daily training. It's not separate. There are so many conditions in our lives, and our lives seem so complicated, in part because we're trying to react and deal with all these conditions. And this is why I keep repeating steps. Because in the moment, if we bring ourselves back, we see what's going on. I'm reacting. Then we get still, because that's what we need to do. We need to be still. Look inside, not out. And we investigate. I do this action all the time. My old friend anger. Or there's my old friend judgment. Or there's my old friend jealousy, spite, blame, you name it. And then not to believe, which helps us to loosen our grip and deepen our stillness. Why do we call our fetters our friends? In part because it breaks up the habit. We blame ourselves for blaming. And when we keep calling our afflictions friends, we come to realize that they're actually there to help us. They really are our friends. They're giving us this incredible opportunity to see, to be still, to investigate, to not believe. Relative to habit energy and seeing, coming into this life as a teenager, I had a powerful drive to understand how the Holocaust could have happened. Why didn't the Jews just leave Europe? Why do people do such terrible things to others? So I read and studied many books on World War II. I did not read my history textbooks. I was busy reading Berlin Diary, etc., which was written by a journalist. I also read many stories of soldiers who fought in the Pacific, people who were in prisoner of war camps, in the Holocaust itself, just went into it fully. And when I became a Buddhist and was practicing, I realized, I must have strong karma from this time period. And indeed, I do. From when I was young until I was in my early 30s, I had a repeating nightmare about a tidal wave coming and frantically trying to get those I loved to high ground, to safety. When I was in my 30s and had a regular meditation practice, then I had the nightmare, woke up, and went and meditated. I sat facing the wall, allowed the tidal wave to come right at me. I didn't run away, I didn't try to get anybody away. I just faced it. That was it. That's all I did. The nightmare never came again. Believe me, I continue to train with the questions. It's just that I was no longer being scared and frantic. I was training with it. Because of my karma, I have studied what it means to be safe in detail. There were 2 lives of children which came up, past lives, in the first 5 years of my being a monk. Both of them were murdered. One was of a young 3 or 4-year-old black girl in the South, probably in the 1940s. She saw her murderer as a boogeyman. She was little. She was a tiny little kid. Interestingly, at the time this past life came up, I was having difficulties with a monk here at the monastery, and was shown that the monk carried the murderer's karma. I was so moved by their attempt to cleanse this karma that it shifted my difficulties with them. I had more patience and gratitude towards them. a few years later, was driving on a back road out on the coast, again as a monk. It was very narrow, there were no shoulders, and I went around a curve and there was a snake crossing the road. I stepped on the brakes, of course, trying not to hit it, but I couldn't swerve the car in any way, and I hit it and killed it. The moment I killed it, I experienced a past life of a young boy, poor, from the 1400s or so, had a crutch and could barely walk. He was trying to cross a road in his village or city and was deliberately run down by a man in a wagon with horses, out of hatred. I found a place to pull the car over, went back, got the snake, carried it to the side of the road. I ordained the snake, which means I gave it the precepts and told it to take refuge. I forgave the hatred. Honestly, I was blown away about how fast and clear the memory was. I was pretty shaken in a way. Whoa. At some point, after these two had happened, I asked in meditation, why had I been shown these two deaths? What was I to learn that I perhaps had not cleansed? 10 years later, this is the thing I mentioned earlier, 10 years later I got the answer. I was told that I needed to see that the children, in spite of what happened, were all right. This is a most profound teaching for me, for all of us to remember. No matter what happens, we are all right. I'm still dealing with this teaching, and this is why I'm sharing this, so that we all of us can know we're all right if something bad or terrifying is happening. We're all right. It's really important. It's different than how you think of past lives, isn't it? It's kind of this ordinary, oh, this needs cleaning. Will you clean it up? Will you turn towards it? And it's helping us. So sometimes past lives occur because we need to resolve something in the present. Sometimes something is being cleansed by the other involved, and we are the witness thereof. I think that murder of that little girl was part of that I became the witness. Oh, this person is sincerely trying to clean things up. And sometimes we've made a mistake that we're not recognizing in our current life, and it's like, heads up, pay attention to this. Are you listening? Are you seeing? When my daughter was 14, we went on a vacation to Virginia to see a friend and visit Washington, D.C. And while we were back east, we said, well, it's so close, let's go to Gettysburg. We wanted to see the area where the Battle of Gettysburg occurred. My daughter had been studying history at our local community college and had written a paper based on a book about the battle. So we got to Gettysburg, and we didn't go to the main part of the battle. We went to the flank, this forested region, where an important but quote-unquote minor battle took place. But in effect, it saved the war if you were for the Union. It basically made the difference of they held the flank, they fought back, and it saved the main battle. So that's what my daughter wrote her paper on. And all of a sudden, we were there, and she started going, oh, no, it's different than the book had it. And she started going through what was going on for her, what she was experiencing in that moment. And we were, as her parents, were just with her. We just followed along, make sure she didn't fall over a log, but we just let her talk. We didn't interfere with what was going on. And interestingly, at that time we were the only ones there in that particular part of the forest. So it was like really helpful. And so she was in it, we were still, and for once we weren't directive or asking her questions. And I'm telling you this because when you are with someone who is experiencing a past life, don't get in the way. Let them experience it. Be a witness, a support. It's an incredible privilege. And don't be afraid. It was very interesting. Once she finished going through what she needed to see, it was like, oh, that was helpful. And then we just went on with our vacation, the rest of our vacation. Very interesting. Sometimes past lives come in dreams. And they're very different than our ordinary dreams. You recognize them immediately, that this is part of our past, so to speak, our history. And again, we just need to pay attention. I call them teaching dreams. And I actually, it's not just past lives, but sometimes Dharma. A dream will have a Dharma teaching for us. And so what I try and do is write those dreams down. I don't care about other dreams, but that I find helpful. And I reread them after a time, and I say, oh, what did I learn? Did I learn what this dream is telling me? Is it changed? Has my behavior shifted? It gives us space. We need space to work on it. I said this before, I'm going to say it again because it's extremely important. As Reverend Master Jiyu said, the past karma may arrive, or it may simply be cleansed by daily practice. I think that's the most important part of past lives. Once, when I was a layperson watching a documentary on religion, there was a scene from a Jewish temple where the men were down in the temple part and the women were watching from the balcony. I got so angry, so livid, but fortunately I didn't say anything to anyone. I just walked out of the room and went and sat. I calmed down. The intensity of the anger was very amazing to me. Actually, it was, my friend. It was very helpful because it showed me, whoa, this is a trigger for you. This is really intense. So over time, I just worked with that trigger. And I just worked with my feelings of rage at not being able to participate in ceremony. Just see it, be with it. And of course I had an inclusive practice, so spiritual practice, so be grateful for that. Now, I'm talking about these things, it's not about me. Please don't think, oh, Reverend Amanda, blah, blah, blah. This isn't about me. We all have things like this that can arise for us, and use them. That's all I'm saying. Use them. They're very valuable. We see our patterns. We see our habit energies. They are opportunities. Without judgment, we say, oh, isn't that interesting? I find that one of the most helpful phrases when I'm looking at my mind. And we just see what triggers us, what we can work with. If we don't work in the present, we'll be working with it in the future. Things wait for us, repeat for us, until we face them and bring them to peace. This is the process of how we cleanse karma in past lives, whether we see them or not. We turn towards it, even if we feel afraid or unable to handle it. Just be still. If it needs to come, it'll come. You can do it. Now, I asked, I put on the reading list the story of Isidasi. And I'm going to talk about this now. There were two versions of it. The small Japanese edited version of the story, which is called Great Disciples of the Buddha. So is the large one. It's called Great Disciples of the Buddha. So maybe the Japanese one is called something like Disciples of the Buddha. Anyway, in that version, it went from the present life she had as the bane of husbands. That's what it's called. The Great Disciples of the Buddha version went into past lives. How to understand? Well, when you read these stories, see the linear lens in telling the story. See that she keeps having the same experience. Husband's rejecting her, her shame and disgrace and confusion. She's trying so hard to do everything right, and she's failing. Her question is not dissimilar, though it's different, from Shayata's parents that we talked about earlier. Why aren't they successful? They're devoted to the Buddha's Dharma. They're so virtuous. Why are they having hard times? Why are their endeavors coming to naught? It's the reacting to conditions instead of seeing, being still, investigating, not to believe. In Isidasi, you can see the tendency to view from being punished. You can see her as the victim. This is us, whether or not the specific problem relates to you. And that's the key to using past lives as a teaching tool. They're very valuable. There are threads we all share. And they're in our life too. And they provide us with an opportunity to develop and deepen compassion, which is the true purpose of our life. It's the true purpose of past lives. They're not for entertainment or punishing bad behavior. Rather, they're how can we see ourselves and others through the eyes of compassion, love, and wisdom. Now, in the Great Disciples of the Buddha book, they go through all Isidasi's past lives. Was this an embellishment of a great storyteller? Or was it true? It doesn't matter. What can we learn from it? We can see its linear aspect. We can see the fact that it's being told to say to people, don't do non-virtuous behavior. All this Isidasi's problems occurred because she started, if this is correct, it's occurred in a life where she was a he and he was an adulterer and getting all kinds of women into bed with him, married women into bed with him. So you can see that there's a morality issue here in the story. And the consequences, quite frankly, seem harsh. Maybe they're true, maybe they're not. We can just view it without judgment. The story likely has a cultural aspect to it. So what? It's still a very helpful story. If you haven't read it, I hope you'll go back and read it. The books are up in the guest house. Remember, Isidasi, in one very important sense, faced what was going on for her. I think it was after her third husband left, and she said, whatever I'm doing, it's not working. It's just creating more suffering for me. And she sees a nun, and she says, oh great, I don't want to get married ever again. I just want to practice, go deeply into my training, spiritual practice. And the deepening of that is not to be missed. That's a very important part of the story. Additionally, she's definitely an example of feeling, being the reaper of karma, because she feels deeply the distress and the shame of being rejected. For me, I could relate to the aspect of her continuous trying to do the same perfect thing over and over again, and it was blowing up in her face all the time. And instead of being still and saying, what am I missing? She just keeps doing the same thing. And I think by her becoming a nun, she gets this point, but it was obvious by the third husband that she was just trying to do everything right instead of being with them and caring about them as human beings. Instead of her view of having to do everything perfectly. Did they want that perfection? Obviously not, because they all left her. although the great disciples of the Buddha story, the one with all the past lives, said they all left her because that was the punishment for what was done. Again, take what is important for you. I read once a story of a cancer survivor mom who, before she got sick, had an obsessively clean house and ran her children and husband around that perfection of cleanliness. After much radiation and chemo, truthfully, that no longer mattered. And it was just being with her kids and her husband that was an important thing. And she was much easier to live with. She did get better. That helps. But are we cutting to the most important thing in our own life? When we come upon people's struggles, do they help us say, ooh, am I missing the point? Am I being present to the karma of my present life? Certainly, Isidasi's renouncing the world and becoming a nun was her way of cutting to the most important thing for her. I found that from her story, I saw my own reacting to the conditions of our lives, from seeing with our own distorted lens, which profoundly impacts our behavior. It takes time to know why something is happening. We repeat behavior until we don't, until it gets our attention. And I think eventually, by not believing it completely, we allow ourselves an opportunity to go in a different direction. This is why Isidasi did what she did, and thus just cleaned it up and went on. She was not solid, in spite of the story's linear and judgmental bent. We can see the fluidity. So this being from another world, from another time, 2,500 years ago, impacts us. We're all interconnected, and we can learn from everyone and everything. And that's true of others' past lives or our own. We can learn from them. For me, there are advantages of having two versions of this story, because the Japanese version leaves out the cause completely. Not knowing one's past lives is not necessarily important to understanding that we need to see, be still, investigate, and not believe in our current life. In part, not to believe is part of perhaps, because all of life is a dream. All of life has an unreality to it. And we experience what we experience. Bring our stillness to it. Before closing, I'd like to bring up one more story, this one about present life karma. It's from the book Bones of the Master, and it's about a monk. The monk is telling the story about a time in his life when the Japanese had already invaded Mongolia and were heading into China. So war was happening, and it was already a hell realm. If I'm remembering correctly, the monk was visiting his mother when the Japanese soldiers came to their village, and he escaped into the brush. She said, "You go," because she knew they would kill him for sure. And she stayed because she was a villager. She thought she could get by. But of course, she couldn't. The soldiers started strangling her. They were going to kill her. And as they were killing her, she yelled to her son to stay away, to keep hiding. The soldiers killed her. After they had gone, he went back and buried her, did a funeral for her. While retelling this story to the author of the book, some 40 or 50 years later, the monk said, "This is hot karma, very hot." It was still hot for him, 40 or 50 years later. The past or present karma with trauma can be hot, painful, not easy to cleanse, even after many years, even with beings who had been deeply training. That is okay. We can accept this. Don't idealize that we can let it go or cleanse it easily. Let it be hot if it's hot. And keep this in mind. This was a great monk. And he didn't dwell in this karma. He did his practice. And if he needed to tell the story, it became hot again for him. He sees it. He's still with it. He's not dwelling in it. And we can have the deepest respect. Past and present and future are not separate. It's really about our willingness to turn, to see, to be still, to investigate, and to let go, to not quite believe. And that is our practice. So tomorrow we will talk about the emptiness, the deepest side of karmic consequence. Thank you very much. Homage to all the Buddhas in all worlds. Homage to all the Bodhisattvas in all worlds. Homage to the scripture of great wisdom.